We'll have it.
Good to see you again, Mark. What's going on?
Nice to see you as well, my friend.
Good to be back.
An absolute banger in the stock market this week. Let me tell you what.
Yeah?
Oh my God, I just can't believe it.
How? What happened?
I can't believe it. So I'm reading this book,
Mm-hmm.
How to Day Trade for a Living, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just for tips,
Sure.
And I'll tell you what, I have read about half of it,
Uh-huh.
and I've only implemented about half the book so far in my trading endeavors.
Sure.
And I'll tell you what, man, I've been killing it.
Yeah?
Like the amount of just more confidence and patience, really. Like, I used to have a serious problem with if I had money in my account sitting there. I used to have an issue with that. Like, I always felt the need that my money needs to do something. If it's in the account, it needs to be in something.
You have to spend it.
Right. I have to have it invested or trading actively, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one of the biggest things I've taken away from this book so far is, like, it's okay to go several days without a trade.
Sure.
Because if you can enter 20 trades that are all bad just because you're in a rut, you want to be in a trade or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of pointless to do that.
Yeah.
It's difficult to do that if you don't have the right scanning tools and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like people like you and I, where I'm not really heavily invested in trading yet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the budget for the software to find out which stocks are moving the right way that I want to and all that other stuff.
Right.
I have to go and physically look at all the stocks that I know have a lot of volume right now. And I have to do my little fucking analysis of each one and then pick one that is good for me.
Sure.
So just that alone has been extraordinarily helpful.
Yeah, it seems like that is if you had the money in the budget to buy that perfect software, it would just be giving you the answers anyway, and you wouldn't learn anything. I feel like what you're doing is you're flexing the muscle. You're starting with the small weights and going up to the big weights by doing those exercises.
Yeah. I think that for instance, right? By all means, I don't condone guessing that Amazon is going to go down in price.
Sure.
But I did that the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And I killed it. 30 minutes goes by. I had made $400. Oh, I was on top of the world.
Based on what?
So I traded an option, right? So I went short on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
So I put a $3,500 put on Amazon because basically I have my I don't know what I want to call it. I forget what they're called. So basically you have things that you can put on your chart. That's like you can put all your moving averages and everything like that on your chart.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically I waited for a bear candlestick to come below the 9-day moving average, short-term 9-day moving average. And that's when I decided, hey, I'm going to put a put option on this and I'm just going to ride it out for a couple minutes. Whatever happens,
Sure.
Because it could go totally wrong. But based off everything that I've looked at and the patterns of the past and everything like that, I was willing and confident to say that this is probably going to go down just like it did back here.
Mm-hmm.
So given that, it dropped it did like $100 down yesterday. And I had a put option for $3,500. It went from $3,700 to $3,650. Well, I had it and I cashed out. And I took my contract was more valuable because it got closer to the strike price. I cashed. It never hit the strike price, but it got more valuable because it got closer. So I cashed that out and I just took my $400 and I ran. But today, on the other hand, it wasn't such a good day. Like today, I was down like $230, but it's all Jeff Bezos money. So
Yeah. Right.
how can you
Well,
complain?
yeah. So I guess I have a take on that. My first thing is I used to look at something called the relative strength index,
Yeah, I do that
where
too.
it
Yeah.
kind of looks at that. It's a momentum indicator
hmm
about a
hmm
stock. And so I will look at that and see where like Bitcoin is and
Yep.
with its RSI, and I'll kind of buy in or not buy in based on
hmm
that. So if it's
hmm
oversold, then I won't buy in. But if it's oversold, I will buy in. Under purchased or inflated, if you will,
hmm
I just stay away from it, right? Because it's
hmm
obviously there's like mini bubbles. So yeah, I do think that's interesting. My second take is I wanted to ask a question because I'm not a huge fan of options trading.
hmm
Not because I'm scared of it so much. It's just I'm kind of it almost looks like it's an incentive. It gives people an incentive to be risky in the market and act dangerously
hmm
based on strict self-interest. It seems like there's a lot of potential negative externalities. And I'm not saying there needs to be regulation against or anything ridiculous like that.
hmm
I'm just wondering, is it beneficial? Does the benefit of all that money being out in the market outweigh the possible dangers of over conflating the value of a market, like expanding an already extremely blown up bubble as we have right now?
hmm Well, so to your first point of your RSI in Bitcoin, I would say make sure, just a tip is make sure that when it can be overextended with low volume, and that doesn't help you out at all. Or it could be,
Mm,
sorry, it could be under, um, I can't ever think of the words when I want to use them, but it could be undervalued,
hmm
right? Or oversold is what I'm looking for. It could be
hmm
oversold, but it could be oversold with no volume, and that really isn't going to get you anywhere, because if you don't have volume of people like trades,
hmm
if somebody's not buying a lot of it, it's not going to be able to propel you to the next price level, right? So your RSI and your MACD, like your MACD might cross and your RSI might start to come back up into normal to overbought ranges.
hmm
But if you don't have any volume, like if somebody's not buying 5,000 Bitcoin at that exact moment,
hmm
then those you're not going to have the same momentum. So I just wanted to make sure, just give you that tip that when you're looking at those things, you want to look at volume as well.
Okay.
But so, and then for the options trading, I think options is incredibly interesting.
hmm
I only know the tip of the iceberg when it comes to options. Like I buy calls and I buy puts. Like I don't sell covered calls, I don't sell covered puts, I don't do any of that stuff because I don't have the capital to do that.
hmm
So when it comes to selling calls and selling puts, if you have the capital, as long as you're not using margin, which is
Mm,
basically a loan from your broker,
right.
if you're selling those things, they are incredibly, like, the risk of an option goes so down. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. They're not very risky at all. And you really can't make that much money when you're selling calls or puts
Okay.
unless you have a lot of money invested.
Mm,
Whereas that's kind of the beauty of buying calls and buying puts is people like you and I have the opportunity, if you know what you're doing, right? Because so 90% of options do expire worthless,
hmm
right? That's something that a lot of people don't understand is when you buy an option that's next year, there's a 90% chance that your option is going to expire at $1 or $0,
mm.
right? Which basically it's worthless. So
So all the value you've put in disappears.
correct.
So what happens to the money? So they I lose my money and the company gets theirs, or
No, it goes directly to the put end of things. So there's people so let's say you have an option on Tesla for $1,300.
Mhm.
So there's a call side and a put side of that, right?
Yeah.
So the call side is set, this guy is basically buying 100 shares, which that just means that if you have enough capital in your account at expiration date and your strike price is below market value, you
Uh-huh.
can exercise that option and buy 100 shares at that price.
Oh, gotcha.
Right. So that's kind of the value in it for people.
So there's two players in the market. There's you
Yes.
doing like exercising what you want,
Yep.
your options, and then there's
Yep.
someone who's willing to buy or sell those
Yep.
options.
Yep.
And then if you lose the money, they get it, and if they lose the money, you get it.
So I should say that's how it works until it's worthless. So when it goes worthless, the broker takes your money
Okay.
because you're when you buy the option, you're buying the option through your broker. And so basically, then when you want to sell it, you're selling it to another individual who's looking to get into the same position you're in,
Sure.
right? And you're always trying to sell it to them higher than you got in, blah, blah, blah. But when it gets to expiration date, then you're dealing directly with your broker.
Mhm.
So technically, if it's worthless, your broker got all that money.
Okay.
It
So
just vanishes into the market.
right. Well, I'm a proponent and an advocate of moderation, and I'm really not a greedy person. I have greedy tendencies inside my heart sometimes, as all humans do, but I'm really good at smothering those and um, acting with strong moderation and a lot of virtue. And so when I hear those words, it sounds like I would like you to tell me how that's not a casino, right? Because
Mhm.
I look at investing the way I should. I give money to a company. Maybe somebody helps me out and I pay them a broker fee and I
Yeah,
invest in the company because I believe in what they're doing.
yeah,
Options seems like it's just a bunch of people trying to get quick cash, a lot of cash quickly, and not as much as going to the company as much as going to these middlemen.
yes. Uh, I mean, you nailed it pretty much right on the head. That's what drags them to it,
Sure.
right? And it's the same. Like trading is trading, no matter what you trade or how you trade it. Trading is still, you can consider it a casino. There's people who go to the casino and they play blackjack and they say, well, if I play blackjack this certain way, I have a less of a tendency to lose and more chances to win.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So basically with the stock market, it's the same thing as a casino, but you make your own odds. Right. Like you determine your own odds of what you see. Like when you're charting something out, you're basing everything based off of past price history.
Mm-hmm.
What this thing did 2 years ago when it was in this exact same situation. I'm going to move that here, look at all of my indicators that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And if those match what this is, then I'm going to say it's a safe bet to go down to here. And typically people they won't enter a trade unless they can at least 200x their money, right?
Mm.
If your risk reward ratio, like if you're not getting two apples to your one apple that you put in,
Mm-hmm.
nobody wants that trade,
Right.
right? So that's kind of where people make their own odds from.
Mm.
And then there's also like, I kind of, just because we've talked about this in the past, I know your concern is that maybe real retail people manipulate the market by doing this. But in reality, retailers are just trading with the high frequency trading systems that people like Hershire or Berkshire
Mm.
Hathaway uses, right? So
Mm-hmm.
all these big hedge funds and all these big banks and stuff, they all use computers to trade their things the same way we're doing it.
Yeah.
Like the problem is that a guy that was interested in trading 50 years ago created a program that automatically recognizes patterns and sequences in the market, and
Mm-hmm.
this computer buys and sells shares like by the thousands of shares
Yeah.
based off of these patterns that it sees itself.
Mm.
So it, as a retail trader, it's in your best interest to trade with those computers, because if you're trying to trade against computers, you're going to lose every time because they're trading millions and millions of dollars at a time.
Right.
So your $5,000 trade is not going to go the same way as their $1 million trade.
Right.
So I don't think it manipulates it as much as people think it does. But
I would make the argument that the last recession that we saw in March from the economic shutdown, I would say I think a lot because that was one of the quickest drops that we've seen since I think 1987. But I thought I had the perspective that sheer cliff was because there had been so much hot air in the economy in general, but a lot of the baby boomers were pulling out, but the other thing that was to blame was the automatic trading, which kept feeling signals. Oh shit, there's no bottom, and no bottom, and kept selling until it hit 18,000 as the floor. And I don't know. It was interesting to watch that,
Yes. And another thing is, I totally agree with you. It is. I mean, like today was a bad day for me, like I said, but I still had a great time. Like watching my chart and trying to figure out where it was going to stop and all these price levels that it was going to stop at, and then go down and then stop and then go down. And the fact that I was able to predict almost every single, it went one more down past what I thought it was going to go to, one more price level of what I thought it was going to go down to. But it was so much fun just sitting there watching it.
Yeah.
As it was happening, because I was like, man, I pointed all this stuff out to myself. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know why I just didn't stay in the trade. But
sure.
But I don't know. I think there's a lot of people that have money in the market that they can't have it in there.
Yeah. Or they shouldn't.
Yes.
They can't afford to.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
I'll admit it right now. I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
If my Robinhood account went to zero tomorrow, I'd probably shit my pants.
Yeah.
But that's why I don't risk 100% of it ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
it's really interesting because we're both interested in personal finance as well. And one thing I've thought about is the way we're talking. If a boomer heard us talking, they'd be like, wow, those millennials, they're podcasting and they're writing and they're living off savings and they're day trading on Robinhood, and we're the ultimate millennials. But I'm wondering how personal finance will change or evolve, I should say, with our generation, through our generation. On one hand, I say it shouldn't, because personal finance has been the same, right? Prudent behavior will always reward you over greed and too much hunger. And however, I will say Dave Ramsey had a thing where he said most millionaires are people who stay in one job long term, puts savings into a 401k, and bought a house, paid it off, and went from there. Well, you're looking at a bunch of students who are, drowning in debt, a lot of them drowning in student loan debt, 50,000 plus, who aren't ever going to be able to buy a house unless the market completely crashes. And they hate their jobs because because the institution of college and the baby boomer generation pushed them into organized debt. And now they realize they hate their job and they want to be autonomous, but they can't because they're in debt. And so how do those people access financial freedom, right? That's what I think we're going to see evolve in our generation.
For sure. Funny thing that you bring this up is because I was just talking to my friend at work today about how Robinhood has a debit card. And if you have over $2,000 in your account, you can withdraw unsettled funds.
Oh.
From any ATM anywhere. I'm not sure about the fees or anything like that, but.
What's an unsettled fund?
So an unsettled fund. So even if you're invested in something, right, and you want to sell, let's say you have $10,000 in Robinhood and you sell $5,000 of stock to go buy a house or whatever you want to do. If you have a Robinhood debit card, you can go to the ATM right after you sell it and take your, that is technically an unsettled fund. A settled fund is typically 3 business days after
Yes,
you make the sale.
I get what you're
Just
saying.
like when you go to a restaurant and the sale is pending in your bank account, and then 3 days later, it's typically finalized.
Yeah,
as a
you're asking
transaction.
you're asking permission to use your money before
Correct.
it's in cold hard cash.
Correct. And if
Yeah.
you have over $2,000 in your Robinhood account, they let you take it out.
Right. Okay.
So, and that kind of got my wheels turning when you started talking about, the evolution of finance. Are we going to need banks anymore?
Hmm.
Because let's just say the average individual took their money and put it in Robinhood and then just planted it in an S&P 500 ETF.
Yeah.
What bank is going to match that interest rate?
Right. Well,
You know what I mean?
they offer 8% interest on Bitcoin
Right.
when you stake
Right.
Bitcoin.
Even Bitcoin.
Right.
But
And Ethereum.
yeah, any crypto, but like that's what I mean.
Right.
Like the banks just can't compete with these other.
Yeah. I think the best bank account that I've ever found was the Capital One 360 savings, and that's a 1.5%.
Dude,
Yeah.
it's terrible.
Right.
Like, dude, if you would have had I don't know if you can see my screen there.
Yeah.
In the S&P 500 ETF, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have 119% over the last year.
Yeah.
That's including the COVID dip.
Yeah. How much was it again?
119%. It's a
Yeah.
3x. It's a 3x ETF.
Yeah.
But
see, and if you're in Bitcoin, I mean, you can see how much that would be too. So
yeah,
I obviously have a balanced portfolio where probably 40% of my portfolio is crypto, and then the rest is ETF and securities, like a mixture of ETF and securities. I invested really heavily in the COVID dip because I knew that was it, right? That's what I was waiting. That's what I had been. Yeah, I knew that was what I was waiting for. I think I can't get into my Robinhood right now, but and I don't need to, right? Because I'm unemployed. But I think the last time I checked it, I was over 150% gain.
It's awesome.
And yeah, and if I would say like crypto corrected, it was over 80%, and
crazy.
It was ridiculous.
Crazy.
I guess how much of that is real money, right? How much of that is maybe real money is a bad way to say it, but how much of that is inflation?
Oh, I thought you were saying like how much of it is real gains because you have to sell it in order to actually realize the income.
That's true. There is a cost to sell, but no, I'm talking like inflation.
You're talking inflation.
Yeah.
Ooh. That's a tricky question because it depends. I think it depends what you're buying. Right now, it depends what you're buying, but I don't know.
Yeah. So I want to share an article. My buddy Stephen Leopold, I think his last name is, on LinkedIn. He always shares these really interesting finance articles, and he said that, or the article he shared was, I commented on it, and it was houses are at an all-time high, the stock market's at an all-time high, GDP's at an all-time high, people are quitting their job at an all-time high, they're doing what they want at an all-time high, all this stuff. So it seems like everything's perfect. However, consumer reluctance, or I think it was consumer reluctance or consumer sentiments at a very choppy. And so because of like gas prices and shortages in the in markets, consumers, although people are like doing what they want to, they're being paid a lot, they still aren't getting what they want, right? They're not living as happily as they should be, you would say, under these conditions. And so you kind of look at it as like, whoa, what's going on? What's underneath the water?
So I have a question for you. So you said GDP's at an all-time high. So I recently looked into this because I was curious about it myself. I said, this doesn't make any sense.
Right.
How could GDP be high if the prices have never been higher? But nobody's getting paid anymore,
Uh-huh.
right? So I started doing some digging. Turns out that people are actually spending less money on things that they want, like you had said,
Yeah.
but they're spending more money on assets.
Oh,
They're not actually spending money on goods. And the GDP, I think last month or the month before, was only 2% higher. But if you actually do some digging into it, uh, it's mostly related to tariffs, and the actual sales has gone down.
huh. So what kind of assets are people buying?
Uh, I believe it was like stocks and possibly properties and stuff like that. Just mostly things that are accumulating value or
Oh, yeah.
things like that.
I wonder what's really, I wish somebody would break this down to see who, home ownership in the United States, like who's actually driving the house prices up. Is it consumer speculation, or
I don't believe so.
is it huge companies like Amazon buying up property?
Yeah, I think the latter of the question is the correct answer because
Yeah,
hear me out. If you go to any other country in the world, it's a renter's market.
sure.
The average individual doesn't buy a home in Ireland. They rent a home,
Because they
like
can't afford a home.
because they can't afford to buy it.
Right.
And and a lot of governments like to do this because it gives them more control over people.
That's true.
So I personally think I and this is the
Hmm.
conspiracy side of myself coming out now, but I think
Hmm.
it's government backed companies are
Hmm.
buying real estate in mass quantities and are renting them out to people,
That's interesting
everyday
perspective.
people.
Interesting. I wonder though, I'm thinking of, in regards to my life, and this kind of goes into something I want to talk about is um why are people why do people what's the why behind prudence, right? And I wanted to explain something that what's the why behind my prudence? Well,
Can I
and
have
this
a
will
definition of prudence, please?
yes. Um, I would say like financial prudence is your personal discipline to conserve, to be conservative with money, right?
So like
Invest
frugal,
wisely.
same thing as frugal, kind of.
Frugal is half of it, right? So
Okay.
frugal is the spending side, but you also have
Ah,
to make
gotcha.
money, right?
Yeah,
So prudence is kind of making money effectively and saving money effectively.
understood.
It's controlling both sides of the equation. So
Okay.
why I want to be prudent, and right now obviously I'm on the cost saving sides, but I'm investing all this money into my writing career. Anyways, before that, I paid off my student loan in full through absolute strict discipline. And the reason I did that is because I just wanted to be free and clear of really the government and any debtors. Um, and the other reason I did that is because I wanted complete autonomy in my life, right? And the only way to have complete autonomy, I should say relative autonomy in this country, because you have to play under, there's no absolute freedom. You have to
Right.
play in the sandbox. But to have relative autonomy, you have to be debt free and you have to own something, right? You have to own
Mhm.
some sort of means of production, whether that's a skill you have, a factory, or your house, right? If you have your house, it's a huge bargaining chip. It's not the best bargaining chip because the government can take it from you
Mhm.
and the banks can take it from you. Anyone can take it from you.
Mhm.
I'm not necessarily charged taxes on writing, right? Because it's skill. If I have a transaction that equals that where I pull in dollars through a traceable source, then I have to pay taxes. But if I can figure out a way to survive without doing that through trading entertainment and emotion,
Mhm.
then I don't have to, that's still an asset without the government knowing, right? And so I'm literally right now, I can see myself as a renter. I'm depleting my funds. I had a goal of buying property. I'm depleting my funds by going into this writing thing, which is going to grow exponentially eventually, right? It's an investment. But I really feel autonomous right now because of how I just explained that. Do you have a what do you think about that?
So I think I agree with you, and I think the way I would put it for uh, different types of people is like you don't have to do anything because you don't have any debts to pay back to debtors. So you're not forced to do anything. You don't have any handcuffs on you. You're not forced to do anything. Like I'm forced to go to work every day because I have debt to pay every month. I have to pay my bills, or else my things get taken away from me.
Sure.
So it's like I think but no, I agree with it. I 100% agree with it. I think that if you have, especially from a focus aspect, I think if you have less bills and debt to focus on, you have more energy and time to focus on your writing or whatever it is you want to do. Whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think there's something to be said about having no debt. But what I want to say, and I don't know if everybody's going to agree with me on this, but the government rewards you for doing things that they cannot do.
Sure. Right.
Right. So they reward you for being a writer. They're not going to tax you. They're not going to for actually writing stuff. They'll tax you for the sales of your books because they can sell a book. Right. But they're not going to tax you as heavily if you're providing housing for people who can't afford housing. And they're not going to tax you as heavily if you're providing jobs to people who can't provide jobs to other communities. So when people get upset about Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and all these other millionaires for their tax breaks and stuff like that, well, the government is giving them those tax breaks because the government can't provide what they are providing. Right.
I see your perspective and I hear you, but I think my vernacular is different than yours. You say the government rewards, and I know that comes from somebody who's very successful. So I respect that person and that brand. However, I don't like that word reward, right? It's almost like the government is this all-knowing, all-being central figure that kind of controls industry and allows industry to flourish. Government does nothing but take, and they don't make money unless they take from us, the productive people. And if you read Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, John Galt stands up in the factory and he says, I will stop the motor of the world. And that is essentially, I think, what the government tries to not do. They creatively don't shut the world down, but they don't allow it's hard for me to believe that I should say I don't want to promote that vernacular. I do, you know what I mean? Because we have given them the power to shut things down as they feel fit, right? But like we've seen in the COVID economy, and they pick and choose which industries are essential and stuff like that. I don't think that's a power the government should have. So I don't know. I'm just thinking the opposite of that. Maybe incentivize is your word, right? Maybe what if
no, that is correct. That would be the word I'm looking for. But I think that people don't understand the power that we, the people, have given the government.
No, that's true.
Nobody understands the power that we've given them. And
or maybe they do. They don't understand the possible fallout from it.
I really don't think people are educated to know.
No,
I don't believe so, because unless you self-educate and you go and find out for yourself what the government is, what it's about, and who's in the government and why they're in the government.
Sure.
I don't think people understand, like, getting the government involved in half of the things that they're involved in was just a huge mistake. And every inch you give them, they will take a mile. Right. And that's just all across the board. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm in a management role at my job right now, and I've been letting these guys just do whatever they want for breaks and stuff like that. You know, as long as they stick to the times, I'm fine with it. But you'll start to realize, if you just don't say anything and let them do whatever they want, they'll start taking minutes, and then that 10 minutes turns into 20 minutes. Like, they have a 15-minute break, a 30-minute break. That 15-minute break has now turned into 30 minutes. And I have to go out there and I have to tell them, hey, get the fuck out of here. Pardon my language, but and then lunchtime, it's the same thing, but that never used to be an issue.
Sure.
It's a human tendency. It's a human tendency to always just want more and more and more and more and more, because it's power.
Okay. And you think those lowly workers, no offense to them, those lowly workers, they want power over you? Is that what they're seeking by
They'll
taking
get it? I think it's human nature to take everything you can get from a power standpoint. I think it's in your subconscious programming to take any bit you can get.
Is that a bad thing?
No. I don't think it's a bad thing. But I think that without checks and balances, if it goes unchecked, you're screwed. My prediction is we're about 15, maybe 30 years away from just being either Canada or China or Australia. Mostly either, I think, closer to Canada or Australia. In my personal opinion, I don't think we'll ever be like China, because we just have too many people with guns.
Yeah, that's true. It's such a huge continent.
They don't want to take. There's a lot of people in this country that wouldn't take no for an answer. You know. So I think it's more so the government's going to try to tiptoe around those people and convince the people in the cities, which they've already done. Right. They've already convinced the people in the cities that the right way to run the world is through these magnificent things.
Yeah.
That help everybody, because that's what we need to do, is help everybody. I think that leads to bad things. Yeah,
one thing I think is interesting is Michael Malice, he wrote on the North Korea situation. And one thing that he noted from North Korea was the thing that turned that country so quickly was turning neighbors against each other, right? Turning friends against each other. So I think one thing that was done during COVID pandemic was kind of some politicians spoke to the public and said, hey, if you see people not wearing masks, talk to them, tell them, what are you doing? Make them feel bad. And then if there's groups of 10 or more, or 6 or more, whatever the rules were, whenever they wanted to change them, report them, report parties and stuff like that. And it's like, that's kind of like a little taste of that, right? I'm not necessarily I'm not trying to be negative with it, or pessimist.
But you have to be.
And that's one thing that I'm trying to push through my new writing brand, is just, I want to hone people's thinking to to ask courageous questions, right? Be courageous in the face of tyranny and ask why. How come? Why is it this way?
I want to clarify something too. Tyranny isn't just the military coming and knocking on your door and blowing you up with a bazooka, or driving a tank down your street, right? Tyranny is the cop that went into, I forget his name, I forget the guy's name, right? But this just happened. But cop goes into the guy's house. The guy thinks he's an intruder, shoots the cop.
Yeah.
The guy's innocent.
Right.
Right. That cop going into his house unannounced is technically a form of treason. The government telling you can't leave your house is technically a form of treason.
Yeah.
Technically, right? It's not. people think that when you use the word tyranny, they think that you're taking it to the whole fucking extreme.
Right.
You
Right.
know, there's tanks on the street, there's military fucking flying drones over your house and stuff.
Right.
And I think those people are misinterpreting when people use the term tyranny. And I just wanted to clarify that for
Sure.
anybody who deems it necessary to watch this to watch
Right.
this podcast.
Yeah, no doubt. So I wanted to share something. That was enough negative news. I wanted to share some positive news.
Okay.
So, one thing I've been doing, I don't know if you have a meditation practice or anything like that.
I do.
But what is your meditation practice?
I typically just throw some headphones on, listen to some nice calm music, and then I just repeat. So I say what I want and how I'm going to get it.
Sure.
That's
So
all I
it's
say.
is it the same thing every time?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the same thing every time. Or, I mean, if I should, it changes every once in a while. It depends on the mood. Like if I'm in a real kind of depressed mood,
Yeah.
I'm more focused because like the three things I want in my life is to be happy, healthy, and wealthy.
Okay.
Right. And so if I'm really depressed, I'll just focus on the happy part.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll spend all of my energy thinking about happiness and what it means to be happy, why I am happy, and etc. You know.
Yeah.
But most days, like today, if I choose to do it like once a week, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is enough for me. But most of the time, I do all three, and I just say how I'm going to get there, what I'm going to do when I get there, etc., etc. You know.
Yeah. So you do it once a week, you said?
Yeah, about. Sometimes I do it twice, but mostly once a week.
So when I say meditation, I do mean stillness. Do you have more
Yep.
stillness than that?
Oh, you mean like just blank mindedness?
Well, not so much, but like concentrated on you can't have blank mindedness, right? You just can't. We have like 80,000 thoughts a day. You can't have blank mindedness. What I mean is like focused breathing, right? Awareness of your
Oh,
breathing, awareness of your
okay.
surroundings, and watching a thought come in and then allowing it to leave while coming back to the breath or coming back to the environment.
No, I would say my meditation is more of a manifestation. Right.
Okay.
It's like a weekly manifestation where I just throw some nice music on and I sit in a dark room.
Mm.
I guess I do focus on my breathing at first, but then after that, I just have like kind of a mantra that I repeat over and over again.
Sure. So what's an example of a mantra you've had recently?
So typically I started off with like, I want to be happy, healthy, wealthy.
Yeah.
I'm going to be happy by, I don't know. Let's see. I'm going to be happy by marrying my fiance, taking care of my dogs,
Mm-hmm.
owning a home someday, and like living on some land,
Mm-hmm.
and like just enjoying life, having a cup of coffee in the morning, like
Yeah.
in the middle of the woods or something. I'll
Sure.
think of that, and then healthy. I'll just say I'm going to continue to eat healthier.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to keep steady exercise. I'm going to continue to do all these things that I'm doing. And then I typically try to add one thing in there, like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym twice this week or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I get walk the dogs, I take them rollerblading, whatever, ride my bike. I get regular exercise, but every once in a while I like to go to the gym and actually lift weights and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
every once in a while I add something new to that. Like I'll try a new vitamin or whatever, see
Mm-hmm.
how my body reacts. And then wealthy just comes down to I've got my three things going on. I've got my career,
Mm-hmm.
I've got YouTube, and I've got day trading. And I would like to learn more about rental houses, which I know enough about rental houses to get started,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm at that point where do I really know enough?
Yeah.
What I
Right.
mean? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So those are really the four things that I do for wealthy, but I focus on what I'm doing in my career now that's good
Yeah.
and what I want to do better and what I
Sure.
want and like particular things I want to attain. And then same thing with the YouTube channel, the same thing with stock trading, and the same thing with real estate.
Mm.
So
So you
I typically go through those steps and then I kind of stop thinking for a little bit,
Hmm.
kind of get up slowly, and then turn the lights on and get back to business. But
Yeah. So yours is really a reinforcement of your
right,
goals.
right. It's like I said, it's more of I would consider it more of a manifestation than a meditation.
Sure.
But I feel like it's because I'm doing it where I go into my bedroom, I lay down with my headphones on, listen to music, and clear my mind and think about things that I
Yeah.
specifically want to think about. I want to take time out of my day to think about these things to make me feel better. I would consider it a type of meditation, not necessarily a bodily meditation where you're focusing on, like the nerves in your body. I want to say, like where you're focusing on your breathing, you're focusing on releasing energy from your muscles and stuff like that. I have done that in the past. I've tried it. It just wasn't. I didn't really. It's nice. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't get what I thought I was going to get from it, I should say,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. Like I didn't get the relief that I thought I was going to. And I found this to help me a lot more
Hmm.
when I'm kind of struggling. I feel like I'm in between a rock and a hard place kind of deal, you
Sure.
know?
Yeah, sure. I think any kind of stillness, even of that sort, I mean, it depends on the person.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the human brain definitely needs some sort of stillness. It needs to be
Yeah.
slowed down.
Yeah.
Because it's designed to keep us alive at all in the jungle, right? And
Hmm.
and we're always looking for a tiger. And
Yeah.
we create tigers a lot in our life because we're looking for a tiger, right? And
Yeah.
if all you want to see is a tiger, then all you're going to see is a tiger. And so you have to kind of bring yourself back to
Hmm.
center. Um, and that Stephen Covey had a chapter in his book. He called that sharpening the saw. And
Hmm.
he had a little parable where there was this guy scraping or hacking at a tree with a dull blade, and the guy was like, "Why don't you sharpen your blade?" He's like, "I'm too busy trying to cut this tree down. I don't have time to sharpen it."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at the meditation. But when I meditate, I have several meditation practices. So I every single day I have two. Um I do 2 times a day. I do something that have called the Wim Hof breathing method, and that is 40 to 45, between 40 and 50 breaths. I do 4 rounds, each round 40 to 50 breaths, and then I start at 1 minute breath hold. So I'll do 30 seconds where I go, and then after 50, I'll go all the way out, and then hold at the bottom for a minute and a half. Sometimes I'll do a minute, but I'll do 4 rounds of those, going 30-second increasing increments. So I'm holding my breath at times for 3 minutes, right? And it's it's a game changer for me. Wim Hof has been a game changer, because what that does is when you're breathing, a deep breath in and then a quick breath out. Like I'm talking like this. Like, let me just think about it. You see what I mean? How it's
Hmm.
like that huge inhale, but then a quick exhale.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're bringing more oxygen into your body than you're pushing out. And
Hmm.
then when you hold that breath at the bottom, like you let the breath out and you hold it at the bottom, you're spreading blood throughout. You're opening up ventricles and capillaries and stuff, and your oxygen is just pushing your blood out through your body. And so if you do it correctly, under the right circumstances, you're literally sitting there like this when you're holding your breath, and you're just feeling your chest tingle, your arms tingle, and it's crazy. And after you're done, you just feel so alive, like, holy shit, I've never seen the world so bright. You know what I mean? And like for example, when I wake up and I don't do the meditation exercise, I feel kind of sluggish throughout the day. But when I go in there and even just do 3 rounds of 30 seconds of
Hmm.
holding, it's like a new life. It's a fresh breath of life. And so I just wanted to introduce that to people who may hear this, and to you, as a possible thing. But it takes a lot of dedication, because it's difficult. It's a challenge to hold your breath. It's not as hard as you think, because you're preloading with oxygen. So your body doesn't need as much oxygen. And it's designed to help you uh, be exposed to cold. So if I'm going in the ice bath, I usually will do that, or I'll do it afterwards, or I really need to do it during. So if I'm doing cold showers, even I do the Wim Hof breathing, and then I go into the cold shower, and then I'm doing the Wim Hof breathing in the cold shower. And when you hold that breath, your body's not concerned with how cold the water is, right? Your body's concerned with pushing
with breathing.
oxygen. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's concerned with breathing.
Concerned with breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to share, I came up with a mantra today. I finalized a mantra today, and it's I am unstoppable. Nothing external shall ever harm me, for I rule my mental domain. Over all obstacles, I will triumph. I am unstoppable. And I've literally memorized that to read. And then maybe that's silly, but I've literally memorized that. So when I'm holding my breath and I think to myself, damn, I really want to breathe, I tell myself, I'm unstoppable. I'm unstoppable. I'm in control. I'm unstoppable. Right. And the thing is I learned that from Tony Robbins, because Tony Robbins told himself, I'm unstoppable. And that's all you say, then that's all you think.
Right.
And you start to believe that kind of thing. And when you're then the next time you're challenged, you're like, wait, I'm unstoppable. I'm in control of myself. Nothing can harm me outside of my body. Nothing can harm me unless I allow it to. Right.
No, the only reason I had a little chuckle there was because when you put your head down to read, your deer popped up in the back.
Oh, did it come up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny. I couldn't control myself.
That is funny.
But no, I think that I literally, that's actually interesting that you say that, is because I constantly think to myself over, like, I guess I've kind of had a mantra, right? Like, that I've kind of repeated to myself, like, basically saying, like, you're strong, you're this, you're that, you're the other. And it helps a lot.
It does.
It really does.
It helps us tell yourself that.
Yeah.
Right. Self-talk is really important. I think it's underrated.
It is. I hate it when, like, I even catch myself doing it now just because I was raised this way, but like, I constantly find myself, if I want to lose weight, I just call myself fat, which I know a lot of people think is super toxic to do to yourself, which it might be, but that's just the type of tough love that I was raised with from my father and my brother.
Sure.
That was like, if you don't like the way you are, just change yourself. Right. So if you don't like, and this is just me, I'm not talking about anybody else, it's just the way I feel, how I was raised. So when I call myself fat, I feel like I have almost a 24-hour reaction time. When I wake up the next day and I see, like, McDonald's or whatever, I can't even think about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it kind of puts a taste in my mouth when I talk about myself that way. That it kind of, I think it encourages me to lose weight and, like, be a healthier person. A lot of people don't feel that way.
Yeah.
I think so, because I'm not doing it all the time. If I'm happy with myself, I'm not doing it.
That's true. Yeah. I just wonder, because I do think it's important, because I'm hard on myself too. I really am. I just want to read something real quick. This is obviously, I started a Substack called The Perspective Stone, and I have these different segments. I have a subsection that's called the Aurelius Journals, and it studies the meditations written by Marcus Aurelius. And I just kind of I explain how I view it and how I've used it throughout my life, and then some personal experiences. And then I share some tools that may help readers. And so this is from book 5, entry 1. So literally the first one in book 5. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was brought into this world to do? Or is this what I was created for? To huddle under the blankets and stay warm? So you were born to feel nice and you are not willing to do your job as a human being? Why aren't you running to do what your nature demands? You don't love yourself enough, or you'd love your nature too and what it demands of you. When they're really possessed by what they do, they'd rather stop eating and sleeping than give up practicing their arts.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's so profound. And the first time I read that, I was like, holy fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I feel the same way as you do, where I'm very hard on myself. However, we need to be careful not to get into what I call, or a therapist called infinity sign thinking. And so if you envision an infinity sign, it goes all the way from one side to the other, right back into
Right.
the middle, then all the way. And some people have a tendency, when they're hard on themselves, they go so hard on themselves that they have to, oh, I can't do it anymore. I get burned out and I have to go all the way over to the other side. Right. And I guess when Marcus in that entry says, you don't love yourself enough, I
Yeah.
wonder, I do beat myself up and I say, why aren't you working harder? You know, I look at other people and I say, look at how they're producing. Why aren't you producing like that? Are you not as good as they? But that doesn't motivate me as much as my pure love for what I do, my art. You know what I mean? And so I think what I'm getting at is finding purpose, real purpose in what you're doing, instead of beating yourself up so strongly,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
harshly.
I think one of the things that a lot of people our age struggle with is when they get a job, right? They focus on the bad parts. They focus on the things they don't want to do every day. They focus on the things that they hate. And that's the same thing as when you're talking to yourself, when your self-love, right? You don't want to talk about the things you hate about yourself. You want to talk about the things that you love about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of people that can't get out of bed, like myself, in the morning because they're constantly, right when they open their eyes, I don't want to go to work today. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. What at work, right? These are work activities that they don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could just sit here all day.
Yeah.
Whereas if this was any of the other 3 things that I told you that I repeat, like if it was trading, real estate, or YouTube, I have no problem getting out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
I have no problem doing these things. But what I need to understand is I can't have these 3 things because I have dug myself into a hole that I need to get out of before I can get these 3 things. And the only way to get out of the hole is through my career.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I might as well convince myself and to love the parts of my career that I do love,
Mm-hmm.
and not focus so much on the parts of my career that I hate.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a moral dilemma for a lot of people, right?
yeah.
Because it sounds like there's virtue in making sacrifices and being patient,
Mm-hmm.
and doing what you're doing and practicing what you're practicing. But I always have ambivalent feelings, conflicting feelings of that virtue, but I also have courage to chase the thing, my art, the
Mm-hmm.
art I love, right? And yes, I do need to cover my costs, but if you listen to a lot of successful people, I have heard it say there is no plan B. If you truly love something,
Correct.
you're all in.
Correct.
And what if you're doing yourself a disservice by not trusting yourself,
Mm.
going all in on the thing, right? And I don't know, I mean, everyone says cover your costs, do it, work your day job until you can't or you don't have to anymore. But how many people are stuck? How many people get stuck emotionally, right? Because it's so easy to not transition. It's so easy because what happens when you have kids, right? Then you got to pay bills for the kids. What happens when you buy
Right.
your house? Then you got to pay your bills. You never end up going.
Correct.
You never end up
Correct.
going. And so
Correct.
you got to trust yourself to run a couple red lights and say, I'm going,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
No,
don't know. What do you think?
I agree with that to a point.
Mm,
I agree with it to a point. I think that if you are doing that thing and you have no responsibilities, you have no worries in the world, bankruptcy couldn't take what you have. There's absolutely no reason you should not be doing what you love on a daily basis, wholeheartedly putting a 100% effort into it. But if like there's a lot of risk involved, period. But if you increase your like, how do I put this? So I have a certain lifestyle that I have preemptively paid for, right? Like I've paid for my truck and all this other stuff in the future.
right.
And I'm not at that point in the future yet, obviously,
Right.
or else I wouldn't be having this conversation. So I've lived already into my probably 32nd year, you know what I mean, of life financially. Sure. And so I feel like I can't make that decision to just up and leave my career to focus on these other things that don't produce income at the cost of the people who trusted me enough to give me the money for these things in my 32nd year of life.
Yeah.
I feel like if I do that, I'm being selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So the way
that's a
I
good
look
point.
at
That's
it,
a really good point.
The way I look at it is I only work 8 hours a day sometimes. Like right now I'm on 8 hours a day. This weekend I'll be working 10 hours a day or whatever, But typically you get 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, and the rest of the day is yours. Whatever you choose to do with it, if you want to cut into your sleep time, you can cut into your sleep time. If you really want it bad enough, you'll cut into your sleep time. You know what I mean? So I think there's room for people like me to do the things that they want, but you have to really fucking want it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's people out there that can afford to quit their job for 6 months, focus on the things that they want to do and what they love to do. But I think a person who's working 8 hours a day can be just as successful, especially if it's only a 40-hour job.
Yeah.
Especially if it's only a 40-hour job, because you have 48 hours every single week that is completely yours to do whatever you want to do with it.
Yeah.
And some people are going to say, well, I have to take care of my house on those days. Well, what's stopping you from taking care of your house on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? And you have nothing to do Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
Except for your passion.
Yeah. So I want to visit two things. One is patience. Number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number one is patience, right? Your side hustle, and even I have my 6-month plan. That's to complete a book. That doesn't mean my writing is going to take off in 6 months. That just means I'm going to have a book completed and ready to sell. And so patience is number one. And people have to put in that effort. But I want to go back to something you said where you said the word selfish. And I never thought of it from that perspective, because you have a duty to your future self to continue working, and you have a duty to the debt that you've taken out, the people you've borrowed from. Correct. You have a duty to repay them, because in your self-interest, you took on debt because you wanted to learn or live a certain lifestyle. Correct. However, I want to say the people bogged down in student debt, what duty do they owe? Because they were technically, you could say that they were irrational when they were taking on this debt. That you could say, well, that's a parental deficiency. Their parents should have said something. And we're obviously, that points to the silent generation who gave their kids away to surrogate parents, the public school system, who socialized them to believe, let's go to college, everyone go to college. They believe the college scam. I'm just kind of thinking I'm from a different perspective because um I truly wanted what I want, right? I truly wanted the autonomy. And I said, I'm willing to live a not lavish lifestyle and not have things. I'm still
Mhm.
driving the same Kia, you know,
Yeah,
I,
baby.
and the
Choo choo.
reason, right. And I felt the reason is I didn't want to owe people anything, right? But I think that's
Absolutely.
interesting how you say that would be selfish. It's selfish to chase your dreams prematurely.
Yeah, it is. And I think so. First, your patience. No, that is something I suffered with
Mm,
crazy last year in particular. I wanted everything now, now, now. I wanted to be the best, day trader right now,
right,
right? I wanted to have 25 grand in my Robinhood account so I can have unlimited day trades right fucking now.
right.
But the patience, like I said earlier today, when with trading, not every day you have to do something. Not, just calm down. And then, who says it the best is Jordan Belfort.
Mm,
He came out about 2 weeks ago and he said, do everything in moderation. If you want everything now, you'll have nothing to get when you're 10 years down the road. You can get everything now, but it's going to age you the same amount it's going to age you 10 years down the road. So you might as well do it moderately and
mm,
enjoy the process,
yeah,
because everything in life is a process, whether you want to live on the curb or whether you want to live in a mansion. It's all a process,
yeah.
right? And so it's in your best interest as a human being to enjoy the process as much as possible. That way, when you're on your deathbed, you're not going, man, I wish I wouldn't have done
Right.
that. So, and then the next thing I wanted to talk about.
I was talking about selfish,
Oh,
paying off
yeah.
student loan.
So you're saying that you were asking me if it's selfish for people with student loans because they were too young to make the decision, which I agree with.
Mm,
Right, you're 18 years old, you shouldn't be making a decision that you want to have 30,000, $100,000 in debt, right?
yeah, I was 17.
Yeah, same. You should not hold the responsibility for that decision. Neither should your parents. What I will say, is there's a lot of people out there that it boggles my mind that, I grew up in a middle class family, nothing special. My parents worked extremely hard to get where they are today. My dad, he still works at a stamping plant. My mom has worked her way up the food chain in Kelly Services for the last 20 some years,
Mhm.
and she's doing extremely well for herself. But what she did that I think was the most valuable thing that she gave me was she read Susie Orman's book, which was Susie Orman was basically before Dave Ramsey,
Mm,
right? They do the same thing, but they have slightly different rules about stupid stuff. But um, and basically, she's like, you don't want to accumulate this debt for something that's going to not pay itself off.
mm,
And that is the most valuable thing that she. So I don't necessarily think that it's the parent's job to make the decision about whether you or not you go to college. It's the parent's job to make sure you understand what you're doing when you go to college. Make sure that you understand you're accumulating this debt
hmm.
for something that is not going to be able to pay it off within 10 years.
Yeah,
That's a pretty dumb financial move.
it is.
So, like, when I was deciding to go to college, like in a university, everything about the whole thing was a financial move to me. I didn't want to go to school to be a gym teacher, which when I was 17, obviously that would have been awesome,
Right,
because
right,
you're not going to be able to pay it. Come on,
right, right.
I, so it really bothers me when people they make these excuses for themselves, but just educate yourself before you make a large decision like that.
Sure.
It doesn't matter what age you are. You should, granted, your parents should have some responsibility, but
They should.
90% 90% of the people who go to college, right? Because people who live in poverty don't typically go to college, right? And arguably, I did not come from a wealthy neighborhood at all. Like 80% of the kids that I went to school with from when I started school to middle school did not go to college. But when I moved, like 90% of people went to college.
Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting to me that I can come from a neighborhood where only 80% of kids go to college, but yet understand the fundamentals of don't go to school for something you're not going to be able to pay off in 10 years.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
If I could understand that, I don't understand why a majority of people don't. I understand that not everybody's going to understand it. I get that. But I just don't see where the disconnect is between the parents and the child and what they're going to school for, how much they're spending a year versus how much they'll be making a year.
Yeah.
How much your rent is going to be inside. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
No, I get it. Well, the last thing I want to say, and I gotta wrap this up after this, but the last thing I want to say is I think I want to reiterate the silent generation because I'm really upset with like my dad's generation and maybe a little bit after like the Gen X people because they really gave their kids away and they didn't take responsibility for the family structure, right?
What generation is the silent generation? I know what the Gen Xers are. I know what the boomers are. Is silent generation in between the two?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, it's not like Gen X. I call those people silent generation.
I understand.
So like your parents, my parents, those are silent generation where they kind of gave their kids away to surrogate parents and the public school system, and they didn't instill the lessons in the kids, right?
Okay.
They didn't teach them that financial literacy and stuff like that, and maybe they didn't even know it themselves, right? But the problem with the millennials right now is we're figuring out that we can't do the same thing that the baby boomers did and succeeded with, right? It's not going to work anymore. We're using a broken model that doesn't work anymore. But I will say, I want to leave on a positive note, and I want to say Marcus Aurelius, I know I'm always going to invoke this guy, but he's literally,
he's great. He's a smart guy.
It's literally the one thing that I worship is the meditations. And he said, use this. I'm dropping a post tomorrow on the Substack, but it's use this setback to practice other virtues, right? And I want to say, practice your patience from the debt that you've accumulated, right? That's what's important. Is it's too late, right? You have to accept the situation. You come eye to eye with the truth of the situation, and you say, I'm going to use this setback, aka my debt, as an opportunity to practice my patience and my courage. Yeah. I'm gonna practice my patience to pay off my student loan with my day job, and then I'm going to practice courage to go into to chase the thing that I absolutely love once I'm debt free and I have accumulated the assets to do so.
I like that. I think that's a good note to end on. Because I agree with it. So it's obviously a good note to end on. Yeah, I agree with it 100%. I think that if everybody takes a lesson from their debt, and I think that lesson should be just be more patient.
Right.
Just be more patient. There's no reason why I couldn't wait 10 years to have a truck.
Right.
So realistically, even student loans, patience could pay off. If you never went to college, you could achieve what you went to college for in 10 years.
Right.
Realistically, you're only saving 6 years when you go to college. What's that?
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things. So.
All right, man. Well, let's wrap this up. I gotta get some soccer in.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done.
No, good conversation today, man. I really appreciated that. I thought it went well.
Yeah, I like these conversations. They keep the mind going throughout the week.
Yeah, they definitely do.
So it's kind of nice to do. So let me know when you want to do the next one. I'm on board.
Okay, will do.
All right. See you later.
All right. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.